The lawyer's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "I hereby leave my entire estate, valued at $50 million, to my devoted caregiver." My siblings gasped. Victoria's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. But I just sat there in my worn-out cardigan, my hands shaking. Because after 10 years of sleeping in the basement and eating leftovers, after a decade of being called the Maid, I finally understood why Dad made me stay. My name is Emma Richardson, and I'm about to tell you how I became invisible in my own family. It started on a Tuesday morning in March 10 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of college with a degree in art history, and absolutely no idea what to do with my life. I'd moved back into the family mansion in Westchester County, that sprawling estate with the circular driveway and the fountain that never worked quite right. Dad had just been diagnosed. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. The doctors gave him 2 years, maybe 3 if he was lucky. He ended up lasting 10, but those weren't easy years. Not for him, and certainly not for me. I remember the family meeting like it was yesterday. We gathered in Dad's study, the one with the leather chairs and the smell of old books and cigar smoke. Dad sat behind his massive oak desk, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. At 65, Richard Richardson had always been larger than life. He'd built his commercial real estate empire from nothing, turned a single apartment building in Queens into a portfolio worth tens of millions. My older sister Victoria was there, 31 at the time, with her designer suit and her MBA from Wharton. She worked in finance in Manhattan, pulling in $500,000 a year, but it was never enough. She wanted Dad's empire. My brother Marcus, 29, stood by the window in his usual spot. He'd followed Dad into real estate, learning the business from the ground up, except Marcus never quite had Dad's touch. Every deal he closed, Dad had basically handed to him. And then there was James, 26, the golden boy, Harvard Law, already making partner track at a prestigious firm in the city. He had Dad's charisma, that ability to walk into a room and make everyone believe whatever he said. "Kids," Dad started, his voice already weaker than it used to be. "We need to talk about what happens now." Victoria leaned forward. "You're going to beat this, Dad. The best doctors in New York." "Victoria," Dad's tone was firm. "Let's not pretend. I'm dying. It might take a year, it might take 5, but it's happening. And I need help. I'm going to need someone here at the house full-time." The room went silent. I watched my siblings exchange glances. They were all thinking the same thing. "Please don't let it be me." "I'll hire nurses," Dad continued, "but I need family too. Someone to manage the household, coordinate my care, handle the day-to-day. I can't do it alone, and I won't have strangers running my home." "Dad, we all have careers," Marcus said carefully. "Important responsibilities." "I know that, son. I'm up for vice president next quarter," Victoria added. "I can visit on weekends, of course, but I understand." Dad's eyes moved across the room, landing on me. I felt my stomach drop. "Emma, you just graduated. You're still figuring things out. What if you stayed here, helped me through this?" My siblings' relief was almost palpable. James actually smiled. "That's perfect," Victoria said quickly. "Emma doesn't have a real job yet anyway." "I was planning to look for museum positions," I said quietly, but no one was listening. "It's settled then," Marcus said. "Emma will stay with Dad. We'll all help out when we can, obviously." Obviously, that was the moment my life changed. I just didn't realize it yet. I thought I was making a sacrifice for a year or two. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought my siblings would appreciate it. I thought so many stupid things. The first few months weren't terrible. I moved into one of the guest rooms, a nice space on the second floor with windows overlooking the garden. I coordinated with the nurses, managed Dad's medications, drove him to appointments. I learned to cook his favorite meals because the chemo killed his appetite, and only certain foods didn't make him nauseous. I read to him in the evenings, old novels he loved, Hemingway, Steinbeck. Sometimes Chandler when he wanted something lighter. My siblings visited. Victoria came for Sunday dinners, always rushing out by 8 because she had work to prepare for Monday. Marcus stopped by after showings, staying for an hour or two, mostly talking business with Dad. James called regularly, his voice bright and cheerful over the phone, always having some exciting news about his cases. They all said the same thing. "Thank God you're here. Emmett, we don't know what Dad would do without you." 6 months in, things shifted. Dad had a bad spell, needed more intensive care. I was up 3 nights in a row, managing medications, helping him to the bathroom, changing sheets. I was exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline. I called Victoria. "I need help," I said. "Just for a few days. Can you take some time off?" There was a pause. "Emma, I'm in the middle of a major acquisition. Billions of dollars. I can't just leave. It's 3 days. Dad's your father too, and you're the one living there rent-free. I'm sorry, but we all have our roles. Yours is taking care of Dad. Mine is building my career so I can support the family in the future." She hung up before I could respond. I called Marcus next. His assistant said he was showing properties to a major client all week. Couldn't be disturbed, James at least answered. I'm slammed. Depositions, court appearances. You know how it is. But you're doing great. Dad told me he's so grateful for you. Grateful. That word would haunt me. A year passed, then 2. Dad's cancer was stubborn. He declined slowly, but he kept fighting. My temporary arrangement became permanent. My guest room got moved to a smaller one when Victoria needed a place to stay during her divorce proceedings. "You don't need all that space anyway," she said. "You're barely ever in your room." She was right. I was always in Dad's room or the kitchen or running errands. By year 3, I'd been moved to the basement. "It makes more sense," Marcus explained. "It's closer to the laundry room. More practical for what you're doing." What I was doing? Nobody called it caregiving anymore. Somewhere along the way, I'd become the help. Family holidays got worse. That first Thanksgiving after Dad's diagnosis, we'd all gathered around the big dining room table. 20 people, including aunts and uncles and cousins. I'd cooked for 3 days straight, roasting a 20-pound turkey, making homemade cranberry sauce, 3 types of pie. I was exhausted but happy. We were together. I'd just sat down about to take my first bite when Victoria called from the living room. "Emma, Dad needs his medication. Can you bring it?" I got up. When I came back, my seat had been taken. "Just grab a chair from the kitchen," Marcus said without looking up. The kitchen chair was smaller, didn't quite fit at the table. I ate squeezed in at the corner, feeling like an afterthought. The next year, I didn't even get a seat at the table. I was too busy serving, clearing plates, making sure everyone had what they needed. I ate later, alone in the kitchen, reheating leftovers. By year 5, I wasn't invited to sit down at all. I was just expected to prepare everything and serve it. "You're so good at this," my Aunt Carol said. "It's like having a professional caterer," Victoria overheard. "Emma's found her calling," she laughed. She never was cut out for the corporate world anyway. The word stung, but I was too tired to fight back. Too tired to do anything but keep going. Dad noticed sometimes. "You should sit with us," he'd say weakly from his chair at the head of the table. But Victoria would pat his hand. "Dad, Emma's busy. She doesn't mind." "Do you, Emma?" What was I supposed to say? "No, I do mind. I mind that I gave up my 20s to care for you while my siblings built their careers and their lives. I mind that I haven't been on a date in 4 years because I never leave this house. I mind that I'm 28 years old and I wear the same 3 outfits because I don't have money for new clothes." I said what I always said. "It's fine." Christmas of year 7 was when I realized how far I'd fallen. We hosted Dad's annual holiday party, the big event where he invited all his business associates and their families. Over 100 people packed into our mansion. I'd been preparing for weeks. I'd hired the caterers, coordinated with the florists, arranged for the string quartet. I'd cleaned every room, hung every decoration. The house looked like something out of a magazine. The party was beautiful. Everyone said so. I worked the entire night, directing staff, making sure glasses stayed filled, handling a minor crisis when the oven stopped working. I wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy. I didn't have anything fancy. Around midnight, as the party wound down, I was collecting empty champagne flutes in the study when I overheard Victoria talking to a group of Dad's friends. "How does your father manage?" Mrs. Peterson asked. "With his condition?" "Oh, we hired someone," Victoria said smoothly. "Full-time caregiver. Lives here, manages everything. She's been wonderful." Mrs. Peterson looked impressed. "How professional. It's so hard to find good help these days, isn't it?" "We got lucky. Emma's very reliable. They were talking about me. My own sister was talking about me like I was an employee she'd hired off Indeed." I stood there in the doorway, holding a tray of dirty glasses, invisible in my black dress. Nobody saw me. Or if they did, they saw exactly what Victoria had described. The help. I went down to my basement room that night and cried for the first time in years. Quietly, because I didn't want Dad to hear. He still needed me. He always needed me. Year 8 brought a new low. Marcus got engaged to Simone, a real estate agent he'd been dating for 6 months. They planned a big engagement party at the house. "You'll handle it, right?" Marcus asked casually. It wasn't really a question. I spent 2 weeks planning every detail. Garden party, 300 guests, live band, gourmet catering. It was supposed to be perfect. The day of the party, I was running on 2 hours of sleep. Dad had a bad night, and I'd been up with him until 4 in the morning. But the party had to go on. I got dressed in the only decent outfit I owned, a navy blue dress I'd bought 6 years ago, and got to work. Everything ran smoothly. The weather cooperated, the caterers were on time, the band sounded amazing. Marcus and Simone glowed in the center of it all, accepting congratulations, posing for photos. I stayed in the background, making sure everything happened on schedule. Then came the photo session. The photographer gathered the family for portraits. "All the Richardsons together," he called out cheerfully. I started to walk over. Victoria caught my arm. "Not you," she said quietly. "Family only." I stared at her. "I am family. You know what I mean." The photos for Marcus and Simone, their announcement. It should be parents and siblings who, have their lives together. Victoria, "Emma, don't make this difficult. You're not exactly photogenic right now anyway. When's the last time you did something with your hair?" I watched from behind a pillar as they posed. Dad in his wheelchair looking frail but smiling. Victoria, Marcus, James all polished and perfect. And Simone beaming, already part of the family in a way I apparently wasn't anymore. The engagement announcement went out in the New York Times the next week. The photo was beautiful. I wasn't in it. Under it, the caption read, "Marcus Richardson, son of real estate mogul Richard Richardson, with his fiancée Simone Chen and family members." Family members. I was a family member. I'd just been cropped out of the family. When I brought it up to Marcus later, he seemed confused. "Emma, we needed clean photos for the announcement." Professional stuff. You understand, I didn't understand, but I stopped trying to The wedding was 6 months later. Of course I wasn't a bridesmaid. Simone has her sorority sisters, Victoria explained. She's known them forever. You get it, I got it. I wasn't part of their world anymore, but I still had to help plan the wedding. And I still had to take care of Dad, who was determined to walk his son down the aisle despite barely having the strength to stand. I worked with his physical therapist for months, helping him build up enough stamina for those crucial 30 seconds. The wedding day was beautiful. St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan, reception at the Plaza Hotel, the kind of wedding that gets featured in society pages. I sat in the back of the church alone, in a dress Victoria had bought me from a discount store. Something appropriate, she'd said. Dad managed to walk Marcus down the aisle. I'd gotten him ready that morning, helped him into his tuxedo, made sure he had his medication. From my seat, I watched him take those slow, careful steps, Marcus supporting him. Everyone was crying. It was a beautiful moment. At the reception, I wasn't seated at the family table. I was at table 18 in the back, with some of Dad's home health aides and the wedding planner's assistants. People I'd never met. People who also weren't quite family, not quite guests. I watched my siblings dance and laugh and celebrate. I watched Dad in his wheelchair, surrounded by old friends. I watched it all from the shadows, like a ghost at my own brother's wedding. When I got home that night, I found Dad in his study. He'd insisted on going back home right after dinner, exhausted from the effort. He was sitting in his chair, still in his tuxedo. "Emma," he said quietly, "sit down." I sat. "I saw where they put you today." "At the church." "At the reception." I didn't say anything. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked. "This isn't what I wanted. When I asked you to stay, I never meant for this to happen." "It's okay, Dad. It's not okay. You've given up everything. Your 20s, your career, your life. And they treat you like—" He stopped, his hands shaking. "I'm going to fix this. I promise you, Emma. I'm going to fix this." I thought he meant he'd talk to my siblings, make them include me more. I had no idea what he actually meant. The next 3 years were the hardest. Dad's cancer progressed. He needed round-the-clock care. I was doing the work of 3 nurses, barely sleeping, barely eating. My siblings visited less and less. They were too busy, they said. Too much going on. But they'd check in on me. How they'd check in? Make sure Dad takes his medication at 3, Victoria would text. Did you schedule his oncologist appointment? Marcus would email. The nurse said he's not eating. Fix that, James would demand in a voicemail. Fix that. Like I had magic powers. Like I wasn't already doing everything humanly possible. I lost weight. A lot of weight. My clothes hung off me. My hair started falling out from stress. I developed anxiety attacks, waking up in the middle of the night, convinced I'd forgotten to give Dad his medication or missed a symptom. One night, around 2 in the morning in year 9, I was lying on my basement cot, staring at the ceiling, when I heard footsteps above me. Dad's room was on the 2nd floor. He couldn't walk anymore. Someone else was in the house. I grabbed my phone and crept upstairs. The sounds were coming from Dad's study. I pushed open the door. Marcus was there rifling through Dad's files. What are you doing? I demanded. He jumped, then tried to look casual. Just checking on some business documents. Dad asked me to grab them. At 2 in the morning? I couldn't sleep. Figured I'd take care of it. I knew he was lying, but I was too tired to fight. Just put everything back where you found it. He left without another word. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning I checked Dad's study. Files were out of order. His personal safe had been opened, though nothing seemed missing. I mentioned it to Dad. He sighed. They're getting impatient. They want to know what's in the will. Dad, it's okay, Emma, let them look. They won't find anything useful. He smiled, that same mysterious smile he'd had when he promised to fix things. Everything's already taken care of. 3 months later, on a rainy Tuesday in October, exactly 10 years after that first family meeting, Dad died. I was with him. I'd been with him for 3 days straight as he declined. His nurses said it was close. I held his hand, reading Hemingway, his favorite. The Old Man and the Sea. It seemed appropriate somehow. He squeezed my hand during one passage. Man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed but not defeated. He looked at me. Remember that, Emma. Remember who you are. Not what they made you. I will, Dad. You've been the best daughter. The only one who really loved me, not my money. The only one who stayed. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. And I'm sorry. Sorry for what's about to happen. But trust me. Trust the plan. His breathing grew shallow. Promise me you'll trust the plan. I promise. He smiled one last time, then closed his eyes. 2 hours later, he was gone. I called my siblings. They all said they'd come right away. Victoria arrived first 3 hours later. She was red-eyed but composed. Where is he? Still in his room. I wanted to wait for all of you before. Have you called the funeral home? Not yet. I thought, Emma, these things need to be handled quickly. Get on it. She pulled out her phone. I'll call his lawyer. We need to get the will reading scheduled. That was Victoria. Dad hadn't been dead 4 hours and she was already talking about the will. Marcus arrived that evening with Simone. James came late that night, flying in from a business trip in Chicago. We all gathered in the living room, not quite looking at each other. We should talk about the funeral, I said quietly. Obviously, Victoria said. Dad would want something big, dignified. St. James Episcopal, I'm thinking. Everyone important in New York real estate will want to attend. We planned the funeral like a business meeting. Who to invite, who should speak, what readings to include. Victoria took charge of everything, making decisions without input. I was too numb to argue. The funeral was exactly what Victoria wanted. Massive, elegant, perfectly orchestrated. Over 500 people attended. Business associates, society figures, politicians. Dad's life celebrated by people who barely knew him. I gave the only personal eulogy. I talked about Dad's love for old novels. His terrible jokes, how he taught me to play chess on rainy afternoons. How he never gave up, even when the cancer tried to take everything from him. People cried. I don't think I did. I was beyond crying by then. After the funeral, everyone came back to the house for the reception. Victoria had hired caterers. Don't worry about anything, she told me. Just relax for once, but I couldn't relax. I wandered through the mansion like a ghost, watching strangers fill the rooms where I'd spent 10 years caring for Dad. Nobody talked to me. Nobody seemed to notice me. I was invisible again, just like at Marcus's wedding, just like at every family gathering for the past decade. I ended up in Dad's study, the one place that still felt like him. His leather chair, his books, his smell of cigars and old paper. I sat down and finally let myself cry. That's where Victoria found me an hour later. "Emma?" Her voice was sharp. "The lawyer's here. Time for the will reading." The will reading was scheduled for 3 days after the funeral. Dad's lawyer, Thomas Brennan, had been handling Dad's legal affairs for 30 years. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of careful, measured demeanor you'd expect from someone who dealt with the wealthy for a living. We gathered in the dining room, the same dining room where I'd been slowly excluded from family meals over the years. Victoria sat at the head of the table in Dad's old chair. Marcus and Simone sat to her right, James to her left. I took a seat at the far end in my usual spot, the corner, the afterthought. Mr. Brennan set up his laptop and a stack of documents at the opposite head of the table. He looked tired, I noticed. And something else. Nervous? That didn't make sense. He'd done 1,000 will readings. "Before we begin," he said, clearing his throat, "I want to say how sorry I am for your loss. Your father was a remarkable man." "Thank you, Thomas," Victoria said smoothly. "We're all devastated, of course. But we know Dad would want us to handle his affairs efficiently. He was always so practical about these things." Mr. Brennan nodded slowly. "Yes, he was very particular about his wishes." "Well, let's get to it then," Marcus said. "I assume it's a standard split? The estate divided among the 4 of us?" "Actually," Mr. Brennan started. "Because Victoria and I were discussing," Marcus continued, "and we think it makes sense to keep the business intact. Maybe James and Emma take cash equivalents, while Vic and I handle the real estate portfolio." "Emma doesn't know anything about the business anyway." I flinched, but nobody noticed. They never did. "If we could—" Mr. Brennan tried again. "The Manhattan properties alone are worth $20 million, Victoria said. "Split 4 ways, that's $5 million each. More than generous for Emma, considering she hasn't contributed anything to the family wealth." "I contributed 10 years of my life," I said quietly. Victoria glanced at me like she'd forgotten I was there. "You provided care, which was appropriate given your circumstances. But let's not pretend you were building the business like Marcus and I. Can we please just read the will?" James said impatiently. "I have a deposition in 2 hours." "Of course." Mr. Brennan pulled out the first document. His hands were shaking slightly. "Your father updated his will 6 months ago. He was very clear about his intentions. He made me read it back to him 3 times to ensure every word was exactly as he wanted." That got their attention. Victoria leaned forward. 6 months ago? Why wasn't I told?" "Your father requested privacy regarding his estate planning." "I'm his daughter," Victoria snapped. "I should have been consulted." Actually, he did consult with one family member during the revision process. Mr. Brennan's eyes flickered to me, then away. But the final decisions were his alone. "Let me see that," Victoria demanded, reaching for the document. Mr. Brennan pulled it back. "I'm required to read it aloud in full." "That was your father's explicit instruction." He cleared his throat and began. "I, Richard Michael Richardson, being of sound mind and body—" "Skip the formalities," Marcus interrupted. "Get to the distribution." "I'm afraid I can't, Mr. Richardson. Your father's instructions were very specific. Every word must be read exactly as written." Mr. Brennan continued reading through the standard opening paragraphs. "Debts to be paid. Funeral expenses covered by the estate. Charitable donations to 3 organizations Dad had supported for years." Then he got to the real substance. "To my children Victoria, Marcus and James, I leave the following." Victoria actually smiled. Marcus leaned back in his chair, confident. James checked his phone, already half checked out. "To Victoria Richardson," Mr. Brennan read, his voice careful and measured, "I leave the sum of $1. Along with my sincere disappointment." Silence. "What?" Victoria's voice was a whisper. Mr. Brennan continued. "To Marcus Richardson, I leave the sum of $1, along with my observation that you never learned the difference between being given opportunity and earning success." Marcus's face went white. "This is a joke." "And to James Richardson," Mr. Brennan read, "I leave the sum of $1, along with my regret that your Harvard education apparently didn't include lessons in basic human decency." James shot to his feet. "This isn't legal. He was on medication. He wasn't thinking clearly. Your father was evaluated by 2 independent physicians specifically to prevent such challenges," Mr. Brennan said calmly. I have their signed statements confirming his complete mental competency. This will is ironclad. Then where's the rest? Victoria demanded. $50 million doesn't just disappear. Where's the estate going? Mr. Brennan looked directly at me for the first time. That's addressed in the next section. My heart started pounding. All three of my siblings turned to look at me. Victoria's expression was pure fury. As for the remainder of my estate, Mr. Brennan read, including all real property, financial holdings, investments, and personal effects, I leave everything to my devoted caregiver. Emma, Victoria spat. He means the nurses. He's leaving it to the nursing service. But Mr. Brennan was shaking his head. The next sentence clarifies. He continued reading. I leave everything to Emma Louise Richardson, my youngest daughter, who gave up her youth, her career, and her life to care for me when no one else would. Who never asked for anything in return. Who loved me not for my money, but despite it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching this happen to someone else. This couldn't be real. Dad he didn't. There's more, Mr. Brennan said. Your father included a letter to be read aloud at this time. With your permission, Emma? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mr. Brennan opened another document. To my children, he began reading Dad's words. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. And if Thomas is reading this letter, it means everything has gone exactly as I planned. Let me explain why Emma is receiving everything. It's quite simple. She earned it. Not through business deals or clever investments, but through something far more valuable. Loyalty, love, sacrifice. 10 years ago, I asked for help. I was dying and I needed family. Emma said yes without hesitation. The rest of you agreed too, but only because you thought Emma would handle everything, and she did. I watched over the years as you three transformed your sister into a servant. I watched you exclude her from family events. I watched you take her labor for granted, her love for weakness. I watched you forget she was even part of this family. Victoria's hands were clenched into fists. Marcus was staring at the table. James had gone very still. I tried to intervene. I tried to remind you that Emma was your sister, not your maid. But you were too busy, too important, too focused on what you'd inherit when I died. And yes, I know about that. Marcus, I know you tried to access my safe. Victoria, I know about the calls to my accountants trying to get information about my holdings. James, I know you consulted with other lawyers about contesting a will before I'd even written one. James's face went red. That was attorney-client privileged. So I made a decision, Mr. Brennan continued reading. I would use my money for one last test, one last opportunity to see if any of you would choose family over fortune. My head was spinning. A test? Over the past 3 years, I've been gradually transferring my assets into trusts, restructuring my holdings. All completely legal, all carefully documented. And I've been watching to see if any of you would notice what mattered. But you never did. You saw a dying old man and a fortune to inherit. You never saw Emma sleeping in the basement, eating leftovers, giving up everything. So here's what happens now. Emma gets everything. The houses, the businesses, the investments, the accounts. All of it. She earned it through 10 years of selfless service. As for the three of you, you get exactly what you gave Emma over the past decade. Nothing. Well, not quite nothing. You each get $1, because I'm not cruel enough to completely disinherit you. You'll have something to show for being my children. Victoria made a choking sound. It might have been a laugh or a sob. I hope, Mr. Brennan read, Dad's voice echoing from beyond the grave, that someday you'll understand what you lost, not the money. The money is just money. But Emma, you lost your sister. You took the kindest person in this family, and you broke her spirit day by day, year by year. You made her invisible. You made her believe she was worth nothing. I was crying now, silent tears streaming down my face. Dad had seen it all. He'd known. Every slight, every exclusion, every moment of humiliation. He'd watched it happen, and he'd been planning this the entire time. Emma, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't stop them. Sorry I made you endure so much. But I needed you to see who they really were. I needed them to show their true colors. And they did spectacularly. You're free now. Free to live the life you gave up for me. Free to be more than what they made you. Take my money, take my businesses, take everything I built and make it yours. Build something beautiful. Build something that matters. And most importantly, build a life where you're never invisible again. To Victoria, Marcus, and James, you're my children, and I loved you. But I didn't like who you became. Somewhere along the way, you learned to value money over people, status over substance. I hope this teaches you what really matters. I hope it's not too late for you to change. But I'm not optimistic. With love and disappointment, Richard Michael Richardson. Mr. Brennan set down the letter. The room was silent except for my quiet crying. Nobody else moved. Nobody else seemed capable of moving. Then Victoria stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor like a scream. "This is insane," she said, her voice shaking. Dad was sick. Dying people aren't rational. They're manipulated by whoever's closest to them. She pointed at me. "You did this. You poisoned him against us." "Victoria," Mr. Brennan started. "Shut up." She whirled on me. "How long have you been planning this? 10 years? Did you even care about Dad, or was this always about the money?" I found my voice. "I never asked for this." "Liar. You manipulated a dying man. You made him think we didn't care. You didn't care." The words exploded out of me, 10 years of silence finally breaking. "You didn't care about him. You cared about his money. You cared about your inheritance. You couldn't even visit him regularly. You moved me to the basement. You excluded me from family photos. You treated me like hired help." "Because you acted like hired help," Victoria screamed. "You gave up, Emma. You just gave up on having a real life and expected us to baby you forever. I gave up my life to care for our father." "No one asked you to." "He asked me. He asked all of us, and I was the only one who said yes." Marcus stood up. "This isn't over. We'll contest the will. Undue influence. Elder abuse. Whatever it takes." Mr. Brennan's voice was cold. "You're welcome to try. Your father anticipated this reaction. He left detailed documentation of every decision, every revision. Video recordings of him explaining his reasoning, all made with witnesses present. Journal entries from throughout his illness. Medical evaluations. You won't win. We have to try," James said, finally finding his voice. "This is everything. Our inheritance, our legacy." "Your legacy," I said quietly, "is treating your sister like garbage for 10 years. That's what you'll be remembered for." James stared at me like I'd struck him. Maybe I had, in a way. I'd never fought back before. Never stood up for myself. I'd been too tired, too beaten down. But I wasn't beaten down anymore. Dad had seen to that. The will reading ended with Victoria storming out, Marcus and James following. Simone paused at the door, looking back at me with something that might have been sympathy, or might have been calculation. It was hard to tell. Mr. Brennan and I sat alone in the dining room. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Is this real?" "Very real. Your father was extremely thorough." He pulled out another folder. "These are the details. The estate is valued at $52 million currently, though it fluctuates with the market. You own 4 properties, including this house. There's a commercial real estate portfolio with 37 holdings, investment accounts, retirement funds, life insurance policies. It's all yours. I couldn't process the numbers. They were too big, too abstract. What do I do? First, you need to hire your own lawyer. I represented your father, but you'll need independent counsel. I can recommend several excellent estate attorneys." He handed me a business card. "Second, you need to prepare for your siblings to challenge this. They will. I've seen it 100 times. But your father built an unshakable case. Why did he make me go through all of it?" The question came out as a whisper. "Why didn't he just tell them to treat me better?" Mr. Brennan sighed. "I asked him that same question. He said he needed to be sure of who they really were, sure of who you were. He said that if he'd threatened to disinherit them, they would have pretended to change. They would have been nice to you out of fear, not love. He wanted the truth, and now I have it. Yes." He started packing up his documents. "For what it's worth, Emma, your father talked about you constantly. How proud he was of you. How guilty he felt about what you endured. He wanted you to have not just his money, but proof that you mattered, that you were valued, that someone saw you." I nodded, not trusting my voice. After Mr. Brennan left, I walked through the mansion alone. Our house. My house now. Every room held memories. The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. The guest room that became my room, that became the smallest room, that became the basement. Dad's study. His bedroom still smelling faintly of the lavender lotion I used to rub on his hands. I ended up in the basement. My room for the past 7 years. A cot, a small dresser, a lamp. No windows. The washer and dryer humming in the next room. This had been my entire world. I sat on the cot and looked around. This was where Emma the caregiver had lived. Emma, the invisible daughter. Emma the maid. But that Emma was gone now. Dad had made sure of that. My phone started ringing. Victoria. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Marcus, then James, then Victoria again. I turned it off. I knew what was coming. The anger, the legal challenges, the attempts to guilt me or manipulate me into sharing the inheritance. They'd use every weapon they had. But I'd already survived 10 years of their worst. I could survive this too. That night I slept in Dad's room for the first time. In the huge 4-poster bed I'd made and changed and cared for him in. It felt both wrong and right. He'd wanted me to have everything. So I would take it. All of it. The next few weeks were a blur. I hired a lawyer, a fierce woman named Rachel Morrison who specialized in estate litigation. She reviewed Dad's will and supporting documentation. Your siblings don't have a case, she said bluntly, but they'll try anyway. Expect it to be ugly. She was right. Victoria hired the most expensive lawyer in Manhattan and filed a contest claiming undue influence. The petition claimed I had manipulated Dad, isolated him from his other children, and coerced him into changing his will. Marcus added claims of elder abuse. He told the court I'd controlled Dad's medication, his access to family, his ability to make rational decisions. James claimed the will should be thrown out because Dad wasn't mentally competent, despite the medical evaluations proving otherwise. It was all lies. Vicious, calculated lies designed to paint me as a monster who'd preyed on a dying man. The depositions were brutal. Victoria's lawyer attacked me for hours, trying to catch me in contradictions, trying to make my care for Dad sound sinister. Isn't it true you controlled who could visit your father? No. Dad could see anyone he wanted. And my siblings chose not to visit often. But you were always there, always watching. I was caring for him. That was my job. A job you assigned yourself. A job that kept everyone else away. Nobody else wanted the job. I finally snapped. Nobody else was willing to give up their life to do it. My lawyer squeezed my hand under the table. I took a breath. Your siblings say they tried to visit, Victoria's lawyer continued, but you made it difficult. You scheduled his care during their availability. You claimed he was too tired for visitors. That's not true, isn't it? He slid a document across the table. This is a text from you to Marcus. Dad's sleeping, maybe visit another time. You sent dozens of messages like this. Because Dad was sleeping. He needed rest. He was dying. Or you needed him isolated so you could work your influence. I wanted to scream, wanted to flip the table, wanted to ask where these concerns had been for 10 years while I was sleeping in the basement and missing from family photos. Instead, I said calmly, I loved my father. I cared for him every single day for 10 years. If that's influence, then yes, I'm guilty. The depositions went on for weeks. My siblings painted themselves as devoted children who'd been shut out by a scheming sister. They produced photos of themselves visiting Dad, carefully edited to look like they came often. They produced texts and emails where they'd asked about him, conveniently leaving out the parts where they'd refused to actually help. They even found former employees to testify that I'd been controlling, that I'd made decisions without consulting the family, that I'd been territorial about Dad's care. It was all technically true but completely misleading. Yes, I'd made medical decisions because nobody else would. Yes, I'd managed his schedule because nobody else bothered to learn it. Yes, I'd been territorial because I was the only one who actually cared whether he lived or died in comfort. But in a courtroom, the truth gets twisted. Facts become weapons. My lawyer fought back hard. She produced Dad's video recordings, where he explained in his own words why he was disinheriting 3 of his children. She brought in the nurses who'd cared for Dad, every single one of whom testified that I'd been devoted, never controlling, and that my siblings had rarely visited. In 10 years, one nurse testified, I saw Emma every single day. I saw Victoria maybe 20 times, Marcus 15, James even less. She produced Dad's journals, pages and pages of his thoughts about his children. Reading them was like being stabbed. He documented everything. Every missed visit, every broken promise, every time they treated me like help instead of family. March 15th, my lawyer read aloud. Victoria came for Sunday dinner. Emma had been up all night with me after a bad reaction to medication. She was exhausted, could barely stand. Victoria asked her to make a dessert run to the store because she'd invited friends over without asking. Emma went. Nobody said thank you. June 2nd, Marcus's birthday. He had a party here, 200 guests. Emma planned everything. Cooked for 3 days. When it was time for the family photo, Marcus told her to stay out of frame. She cried in the kitchen later. She thought no one saw. I saw. October 8th, James called today. Asked how I was doing. I told him about my new medication, the side effects, how difficult it's been. He said, "That's rough, Dad," and then spent 20 minutes talking about his promotion. He didn't ask about Emma once. She's been managing my care alone for 6 years, and he's never once asked how she's holding up. The journal entries went on and on. Years of documentation, years of Dad watching his children and realizing who they really were. The judge listened to it all. A woman in her 50s named Judge Patricia Chen. She had a reputation for being fair but hard. She didn't suffer fools, and she didn't like people who wasted the court's time. After 3 months of depositions, motions, and arguments, she called everyone in for a final hearing. The courtroom was packed. This case had made the news. Billionaire's estate battle. Family torn apart over 50 millimeters fortune. The press loved it. Social media had opinions. Half the internet thought I was a gold digger. The other half thought my siblings got what they deserved. I sat at my lawyer's table in a simple black suit. Across the aisle, Victoria, Marcus, and James sat with their legal team. We hadn't spoken in months. Hadn't been in the same room since the will reading. Judge Chen entered and everyone stood. She sat, looked at the packed courtroom, and frowned. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to make something clear. This is not entertainment. This is a family matter, and I will not tolerate any disruptions. Anyone who can't behave will be removed." She opened the case file, thick with months of evidence. "I've reviewed everything. The depositions, the medical records, the videos, the journals, the financial documents. I've read every text message, every email, every piece of evidence submitted by both sides." She looked at Victoria. "Ms. Richardson, your petition claims your sister unduly influenced your father and isolated him from his family. Is that correct?" Victoria stood. "Yes, Your Honor. And you believe you and your brothers were devoted children who visited regularly and participated in your father's care?" "We visited as often as we could. We all had demanding careers, but we made time for Dad." Judge Chen nodded slowly. Then she pulled out a document. "I have here the visitor logs from the nursing service that cared for your father. These are time-stamped records of every person who entered and exited his room. Nurses are required to maintain these for insurance purposes." Victoria's lawyer half stood. "Your Honor, we weren't aware of those documents." "They were in the discovery materials," Judge Chen said coolly. "Perhaps you should have read more carefully." She put on her reading glasses. Over the course of 10 years, Emma Richardson was present an average of 23 hours per day. That's accounting for brief errands and medical appointments. My lawyer squeezed my hand again. Victoria Richardson visited on average once every 2 weeks, staying for approximately 90 minutes. Marcus Richardson visited slightly less frequently. James Richardson visited the least, averaging once per month for under an hour. The courtroom was silent. "Now," Judge Chen continued, "I've also reviewed the financial records. For 10 years, Emma Richardson received no salary, no compensation, no health insurance. She lived in the basement of the family home with no personal space or privacy. Her siblings, meanwhile, continued to advance their careers and accumulate wealth." She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Richardson, you testified that you offered to help with your father's care, but your sister refused. Is that correct?" Marcus stood. "Yes, Your Honor, multiple times." "Interesting." Judge Chen pulled out another document. "Because I have your father's journals, where he documented asking all 3 of you for help on 47 separate occasions over 10 years. According to his detailed notes, you refused 39 times, claiming work obligations. The 8 times you agreed, you cancelled 6 times. You actually provided care twice, once for 4 hours, once for 2. Marcus's face went red. "I had important business, more important than your dying father." It wasn't a question. Judge Chen turned to James. "Mr. Richardson, you're an attorney. You should know better than to waste this court's time with a frivolous lawsuit. Your father was evaluated by 2 board-certified physicians. His mental competency was unquestionable. Your claim to the contrary is not just wrong. It's insulting to the medical professionals who cared for him. James said nothing. What we have here, Judge Chen said, addressing the entire courtroom, is not a case of undue influence. It's a case of 3 children who took their sister for granted, who treated her like an employee, who expected her to sacrifice everything while they sacrificed nothing. And when their father recognized that and rewarded the child who actually showed up, they decided to punish her for it. Your Honor, Victoria's lawyer tried. I'm not finished. Judge Chen's voice could cut glass. I've been a judge for 20 years. I've seen family greed destroy relationships. I've seen children fight over pennies while their parents' bodies are barely cold. But this case is particularly egregious. She looked at my siblings. You excluded your sister from family events. You moved her to the basement. You refused to include her in photographs. You called her the help. And now you have the audacity to claim she manipulated your father. She didn't manipulate anyone. She simply showed up. She simply loved him. And he loved her for it. Victoria was crying now. Not sad tears, angry tears. Your father left a will that reflects his values and his observations. He was competent. He was clear. And he was absolutely within his rights to distribute his estate as he saw fit. This petition is denied in its entirety. She slammed her gavel. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to pay Emma Richardson's legal fees. All of them. You brought this frivolous lawsuit. You can pay for wasting everyone's time. And I'm putting a note in my ruling that any future contests of this will be considered harassment and subject to sanctions. Another slam of the gavel. This case is closed. Ms. Richardson, the estate is yours. Do something good with it. As for the rest of you, she looked at my siblings with undisguised contempt. I suggest you learn the difference between family and fortune. Before you have neither, the courtroom erupted. Press members rushed for the doors. Cameras flashed. My lawyer was hugging me, saying something about what a huge victory this was. But I barely heard any of it. I was watching my siblings. Victoria stood frozen, her mouth open. Marcus had his head in his hands. James was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, something big and dramatic. Instead, I just felt tired. And sad because the judge was right. They'd chosen fortune over family, and in doing so they'd lost both. We left through different exits. My lawyer ushered me out a back door away from the press. We sat in her car for a moment. You won, Rachel said. Complete victory. They can't touch you now. I know, Emma, do you understand what this means? You're one of the wealthiest women in New York. You're free. You can do anything. I know, I said again, but the words felt hollow. I'd won the money, sure, but what had I really won? 10 years of my life gone, a family destroyed, a father I'd loved gone forever. What will you do now? Rachel asked. I looked out at the New York skyline. The city I'd barely seen in 10 years. The life I'd put on hold, I don't know, I admitted. I've been so focused on taking care of Dad, on surviving my siblings, on getting through this lawsuit. I haven't thought about what comes after. Well, you should start thinking about it, because you have a very big after waiting for you. She was right. The after was huge and terrifying and completely unknown. I'd spent so long being Emma the caregiver, Emma the invisible daughter, that I'd forgotten how to be just Emma. That night, I went back to the mansion. My mansion. I walked through every room, turning on every light. I went to the basement, looked at the cot where I'd slept for 7 years, and I knew I'd never sleep there again. I went to Dad's study and sat in his chair. On the desk, I found one more envelope. My name on it, in Dad's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Emma, it read. If you're reading this, everything went according to plan. You won. I know it probably doesn't feel like winning. It probably feels like you lost your family, lost your siblings, lost the last 10 years of your life. And maybe you did. But here's what you gained, freedom. You're free to be whoever you want to be. You're free to live without apology. You're free to be visible again. I don't know what you'll do with the money. Maybe you'll keep the business. Maybe you'll sell it. Maybe you'll give it all away. That's your choice. But whatever you do, promise me one thing. Don't disappear again. Don't let anyone make you invisible. Not your siblings, not society, not even yourself. You matter, Emma. You always mattered. The world just forgot to notice. Make them notice now, all my love, Dad, I cried then. Really cried, for the first time since Dad died. Not sad tears or angry tears or tired tears. Release tears. Grief tears. Tears that had been building for 10 years. When I finally stopped, I felt empty. But it was a good empty. Like I'd cleaned out a wound. There was space now for something new. I pulled out my phone and turned it on for the first time in days. Voicemails flooded in. Victoria, Marcus, James. I deleted them without listening. But there was one message I did listen to. A friend from college. Amy Chen. We'd been roommates freshman year, lost touch after I came home to care for Dad. Emma, I saw the news. Holy shit. I don't know if you remember me, but I wanted to reach out. No agenda, no ask. Just wanted to say congratulations. You deserve it. Call me if you want to talk. Or don't. Either way, I'm proud of you. I saved that message. And I thought about calling her back. About reconnecting with a life I'd put on hold. About being visible again. The first month of freedom was strange. I'd wake up every morning at 6, my body trained by 10 years of routine, expecting to start my day caring for Dad. Then I'd remember. There was no Dad to care for, no schedule to follow, no medications to track, no meals to prepare, just me alone in a 20-room mansion with $52 million and absolutely no idea what to do. I started small. I moved out of the basement permanently, took one of the big bedrooms on the second floor, the one with the bay windows and the view of the garden. I bought new clothes, real clothes, not just the worn-out basics I'd been rotating through for years. I got my hair done for the first time in forever. The stylist looked at my split ends and thin, stressed-out hair with barely concealed horror. "Honey," she said gently, "when's the last time you took care of yourself?" 10 years ago, I said honestly. She gave me a long look, then nodded. "Well, we're fixing that today." 4 hours later, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. She'd cut my hair shorter, layered, given it life. Colored it to cover the premature gray stress had brought on. I looked younger, healthier, more alive. "There she is," the stylist said, smiling. "That's who you really are." I wasn't sure about that. But it was a start. I called Amy back. We met for coffee in Manhattan, a little place in the West Village. I was nervous. Hadn't really talked to anyone my age in years. What would we even talk about? She was a marketing executive now, had a whole life I knew nothing about. But when I walked in and saw her, it all came back. She stood up and hugged me hard. "Emma Richardson," she said. "The most famous maid in America," I winced. "Is that what they're calling me?" "Some people. Other people are calling you a hero. Depends on which corner of the internet you ask." She sat down, studying my face. "How are you really?" "Honestly? I don't know. I feel like I should be happy. I won. I'm rich. I'm free. But mostly I just feel lost. That makes sense. You spent 10 years being one thing. Now you have to figure out who you are without that." "Who am I without that?" Amy shrugged. "That's what we're going to find out." She pulled out her phone. "First things first. Are your siblings still harassing you?" "I blocked their numbers." "Good. Social media?" "I don't have any. Never had time to set it up." "Also good. The internet has a lot of opinions about your case. Some supportive, some nasty. I wouldn't recommend diving into that rabbit hole yet." She made some notes. "Okay, practical stuff. You have lawyers handling the estate transition." "Yeah. Rachel Morrison and her team." "They're good. Excellent. Financial advisors?" "Dad's old team." "They're reaching out, but I haven't met with them yet." "Do that soon. $50 million isn't going to manage itself." She leaned forward. "Emma, real talk. What do you want? Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" I sat with that question. What did I want? "I want to not feel guilty," I said finally. "I want to not wake up every morning thinking I should give the money back to my siblings to make peace. I want to not feel like I don't deserve this." "You do deserve it. You earned it." "Did I, though? I just took care of my dad." "That's what daughters do." "No," Amy said firmly. "What daughters do is visit on holidays and call on Sundays. What you did was give up your entire life. Your 20s, Emma. You gave up your 20s. You can't get those back." The words hit hard. My 20s were gone. The years when I should have been building a career, falling in love, making mistakes, figuring out who I was, all gone. Spent in a basement, serving a man who loved me and siblings who didn't. "So what do I do now?" I whispered. "Whatever you want. Literally anything. You have money, time, and freedom. The world is completely open to you. That should have felt exciting. Instead, it felt terrifying. I'd spent so long in a cage that I'd forgotten how to fly. We talked for 3 hours. Amy told me about her life, her career, her relationship with her girlfriend. She made me laugh, made me remember what it felt like to be normal, to be young, to be Emma, not the caregiver or the maid or the disinherited daughter who won. When we parted, she hugged me again. We're doing this again. Next week, and the week after. I'm not letting you disappear again. Deal. Over the next few weeks, Amy introduced me to her friends. Young professionals, artists, activists, people who had lives and passions and goals. People who treated me like a person, not a news story. They didn't care about the money or the lawsuit. They cared about whether I was funny, whether I was kind, whether I fit into their group. Slowly, very slowly, I started to feel human again. I met with Dad's financial advisors, 3 serious men in expensive suits who laid out my portfolio in spreadsheets and charts. Real estate holdings, stock portfolios, bonds, trusts, it was overwhelming. The estate generates approximately $4 million annually in passive income, one of them explained. That's after all expenses, property management, taxes. You could live very comfortably without touching the principal. $4 million a year. I used to live on nothing. Actually nothing. What do people usually do? I asked. With this much money? They exchanged glances. That varies. Some clients prefer a hands-off approach. Let us manage everything. Others get involved in the businesses. Some focus on philanthropy, giving money away. I thought about that. I want to learn about the businesses first, I decided. My father built this empire. I should understand what I own before I make any major decisions. They seemed pleased by that. Over the next month, they walked me through every property, every investment, every asset. Dad's empire was impressive. He'd started with one apartment building and built it into a network of commercial and residential properties across New York. Every building had a story. Every deal had been carefully chosen. One building stood out to me, a residential complex in Queens, lower-income housing. It was one of Dad's first properties, the one he'd started with. It wasn't profitable anymore, actually cost money to maintain. My advisors recommended selling it. The tenants are mostly elderly or disabled, one explained. The building needs major repairs we can't recoup through rent. It's a loss leader. My father kept it anyway. Sentimental value, perhaps. But from a business standpoint, keep it, I said. Fix it up. Make it safe and comfortable. I don't care if it loses money. They looked at me like I was crazy, but they nodded. That's when I realized something. This money, this empire, it wasn't just about wealth. It was about power. The power to help or hurt, to build or destroy. Dad had built things that mattered. I could do the same. I started attending board meetings for Dad's various holdings. At first, people looked at me like I was a child playing dress-up. The young girl who'd inherited Daddy's empire. They spoke slowly, explained things in simple terms, clearly not expecting me to understand. But I'd spent 10 years managing a household, coordinating medical care, handling complex logistics. I understood budgets and schedules and long-term planning. I just hadn't done it in a boardroom before. The first time I questioned a proposed budget cut, the CFO looked startled. Ms. Richardson, I don't think you understand the financial implications. I understand you want to cut the custodial staff's healthcare benefits to save $300,000 annually. I also understand we reported $8 million in profit last quarter. I think we can afford to let our workers see doctors. Silence around the table. The previous proposal stands, I said calmly. Find the $300,000 somewhere else. After that meeting, people started taking me seriously. Word spread. The young Richardson girl wasn't just a figurehead. She was actually going to run things. Meanwhile, my siblings weren't giving up. They couldn't challenge the will anymore, but they tried other approaches. Victoria showed up at the house one night, 3 months after the court ruling. I almost didn't answer the door, but curiosity got the better of me. She looked terrible. Thinner than I remembered, her face drawn. She'd aged in just a few months. Emma, she said. Can we talk? I stepped aside, let her in. We stood in the foyer, the grand entrance where we'd gathered for so many family events, where I'd greeted guests while my siblings mingled, where I'd been invisible. I came to apologize, Victoria said. I waited. I was terrible to you. We all were. For years. And I'm sorry. Okay, she blinked. Okay, that's it? What do you want me to say, Victoria? That I forgive you? That we can be a family again? I want... She stopped, struggling with words. I want you to understand. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't see... I was so focused on my career, on proving myself, on being successful like Dad. I didn't see what was happening to you. You saw, I said quietly. You chose not to care, maybe. Tears welled in her eyes. Maybe you're right. But I'm seeing now. I'm seeing what I lost. Not the money, you, my sister. You lost me years ago. You just didn't notice until there were financial consequences. That's not fair, isn't it? I felt anger rising. 10 years of anger I'd never let myself feel. You moved me to the basement. You excluded me from family photos. You introduced me to people as the help. You forgot my birthday 5 years in a row. And I forgave all of it because I thought we were family. I thought you'd realize eventually what I was giving up for Dad, for all of us. I'm realizing now. Too late. Victoria's face crumpled. Don't say that, please. You're my sister. Then you should have treated me like one when it mattered. I walked to the door, opened it. I need you to leave. Emma, please go. She stood there for a long moment, crying. Then she nodded and left. I watched her walk to her car. This successful businesswoman, this vice president, this stranger who used to be my sister. I closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. Part of me wanted to run after her, wanted to forgive and forget and try to rebuild what we'd had. But we'd never really had anything. I'd just been too loyal, too hopeful, too desperate for family to see it. That night, I dreamed about Dad. We were in his study, him healthy and whole, sitting behind his desk. Did I do the right thing? I asked him. You did what you needed to do, he said. You chose yourself, finally. It doesn't feel good. Truth rarely does, but it's necessary. He smiled, that same gentle smile I remembered. You're going to be okay, Emma, better than okay. You're going to be extraordinary. I woke up crying. But they were good tears this time. Healing tears. 6 months after the will reading, I made my first major business decision. I restructured Dad's company, Richardson Properties, with a new mission, affordable housing development. We'd still maintain the profitable commercial properties, but half our focus would be on creating quality, low-cost housing in underserved communities. My board was horrified. This will cut our profit margin by 40%, the CFO protested, and house 2,000 families who are currently struggling to find affordable apartments in New York, I countered. I think that's worth 40%. Ms. Richardson, your father built this company on profit-driven decisions. My father also kept that Queens building running at a loss for 30 years because it mattered to him. He didn't forget where he came from. Neither will I. The restructuring went through. I hired new executives who shared my vision. We started projects in the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, apartments for teachers, nurses, service workers, people who kept the city running but couldn't afford to live there. The business press had a field day. Heiress throws away family fortune on social experiment. Richardson heir dismantles father's legacy. Poor little rich girl plays Robin Hood. But the tenants we housed didn't care about the headlines. They had homes. Safe, clean, affordable homes. That mattered more than profit margins. I also established the Richard Richardson Foundation, focusing on caregiver support. I knew what it was like to give up everything to care for someone you loved. I knew the isolation, the exhaustion, the financial strain. We provided grants to family caregivers, funded respite care programs, advocated for caregiver rights. Amy helped me with the marketing. We launched a campaign sharing real caregiver stories. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people reached out, sharing their experiences of caring for parents, spouses, children with disabilities, people who felt invisible, who'd sacrificed everything, who never got recognition or support. You're giving voice to the voiceless, Amy said. Just like your dad gave voice to you. It felt good. Better than the money itself. I was using Dad's gift to help people like me. People who'd been forgotten by everyone else. But success came with complications. The more visible I became, the more my siblings tried to reconnect. Marcus sent emails about wanting to rebuild our relationship. James sent flowers on my birthday, the first time he'd remembered in 6 years. Victoria kept trying to schedule lunches, coffee dates, sister time. I ignored most of it. But one message from James caught my attention. It was different from the others. No manipulation, no excuses. Emma, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I'm in therapy, working on myself. My therapist helped me see how entitled I was, how I treated people as transactions. You were right about everything. I was a terrible brother. I'm trying to be better. Not for the money, which I know I'll never see. Just to be better. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. If not, I understand. I sat with that message for a week. Part of me wanted to ignore it like the others. But there was something genuine in his words. Something that felt like actual accountability. I agreed to meet him for coffee. Just coffee in a public place with an exit strategy if I needed it. James looked different. Thinner like Victoria. Tired. He'd cut his hair shorter, traded his expensive suits for jeans and a sweater. He looked almost human. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. We ordered coffee in silence. Then James started talking. My therapist asked me to make a list of all the times I hurt you. All the times I chose my convenience over your well-being. He pulled out a piece of paper, covered in writing. I got to 3 pages before I realized I couldn't even remember all of it. That's how normalized it was for me. Using you, ignoring you, treating you like you didn't matter. I didn't say anything. The worst part is I knew, deep down, I knew what we were doing to you. I just didn't care enough to change it. He looked up at me and his eyes were wet. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm sorry for every missed visit, every broken promise, every time I made you feel small. I'm sorry I stood by while Victoria and Marcus treated you like staff. I'm sorry I participated. I'm sorry for all of it. Why now, I asked. Why apologize now after the money's gone? Because my therapist said I needed to, for my own healing. But honestly, because I lost you, and that hurts more than losing the inheritance. I lost my sister. I lost someone who loved me unconditionally, and I threw it away because I was too selfish to see what I had. He wasn't wrong. I had loved them unconditionally. For years I'd made excuses for their behavior, convinced myself they were just busy, just stressed, just focused on their careers. I'd loved them despite everything. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever, I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see who you are. And I'm sorry I didn't see it when it mattered. We talked for 2 hours. James told me about his therapy, his work on himself, his realization of how toxic his values had become. He'd quit his job at the prestigious law firm, was now working for a non-profit doing housing rights advocacy. The pay was terrible, he said, but the work mattered. Your foundation inspired me, he admitted. Reading about what you're doing, how you're helping caregivers, it made me realize I'd spent my whole career helping rich people get richer. I wanted to do something that actually helped people. I didn't know what to do with this new James, this humble, self-aware, apologetic version of my brother. Part of me wanted to trust it. Part of me remembered 10 years of being let down. I need time, I said finally. I need to see if this is real or just another performance. That's fair. Take all the time you need. We parted with an awkward hug. I went home confused, conflicted. Was he really changing? Or was this just a new manipulation strategy? Amy's advice was blunt. Trust him, but verify. Let him prove it through actions, not words. If he's really changing, he'll be patient. If he's not, he'll get frustrated and show his true colors. So I did. I let James text occasionally, neutral messages about his work or asking how I was doing. I responded briefly but didn't engage deeply. I watched from a distance to see if his transformation was real. Meanwhile, Victoria and Marcus tried different approaches. Victoria sent a long letter, detailing all her regrets, asking for another chance. It read like a legal brief, calculated to hit all the right emotional notes. I didn't respond. Marcus showed up at one of my foundation events, trying to talk to me about family. Security escorted him out. I'd made it clear to my team that my siblings weren't welcome at my events without prior permission. I focused on my work instead. The foundation grew. We helped thousands of caregivers, launched a national campaign for paid family leave, created a network of support groups. The housing projects expanded. We broke ground on 3 new developments, all designed with input from future tenants. People started calling me a philanthropist, an activist, a social entrepreneur. Magazines wanted interviews. News shows wanted me on panels. I said yes to some, no to most. I wasn't interested in fame. I was interested in making a difference. 1 year after Dad's death, I stood at his grave alone. I brought flowers, his favorite Hemingway novel, and a letter I'd written. "Dear Dad," I read aloud. "It's been a year. The longest and strangest year of my life. You were right about everything. About Victoria, Marcus, and James. About me needing to see the truth. About giving me the tools to build a new life. I'm not going to lie and say I'm glad it happened this way. I wish you were still here. I wish I'd had those 10 years to live my life. I wish my siblings had been better people. But I can't change any of that. What I can do is honor your gift. Use it for good. Help people who feel invisible, the way you helped me feel seen. Build something that matters the way you did. I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying to be extraordinary like you believed I could be. Some days I succeed. Some days I fail. But I'm trying. And I'm not invisible anymore. You made sure of that. Thank you." I left the letter and the book at his headstone next to the flowers. As I walked away, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Emma Richardson?" An unfamiliar voice. "Yes? My name is Dr. Sarah Kim. I'm a hospice nurse in Seattle. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me? Your foundation helped my family when my mother was dying last year. The grant paid for respite care so I could take a week off, the first real break I'd had in 2 years. It saved me. Literally saved me. I don't know what I would have done without it." My throat tightened. "I'm glad we could help. You did more than help. You showed me I wasn't alone, that what I was doing mattered. That someone saw me." She paused. "I'm calling because I want to get involved. I want to volunteer with the foundation, help other caregivers the way you helped me. Would that be okay?" "That would be more than okay. That would be wonderful." After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried. Happy tears this time. Proud tears, because Dr. Kim was right. I'd shown her she wasn't alone. Someone had seen her just like Dad had seen me,